Today's Star Trek Critic episode to be reviewed is the first season show everyone loves to hate, Skin of Evil. The first point is lost since everyone already knew Tasha was going to die in it. Another point lost since the stardate is too soon, and she was in several shows with a later stardate. They should have planned ahead. And another point lost due to a poor plot point. The whole idea of the plot was Tasha dies and then okay, now what do we do? Another point lost for Deanna on a massively long shuttlecraft trip. Shuttles don't travel light speed, they're to go from the ship to the surface of a planet and back. -1 point for the shadow of a boom mic on the floor. And this is the only time Worf and Tasha really talk. Aww. Geordi says, I number 1. -1 point for cheesy lame comments about Counselor Troy coming back. Tasha says, I number 2. That's really not a nice thing to say about Deanna. Troy says, she is shaken but not stirred. And it's not just Leland Lynch, the engineer is Leland T. Lynch. The T stands for Tiberius. Lynch tells the captain he's between these two guys. Then asks Picard where the dilithium crystals are. Picard says, we don't have them up here. How do they manage asking such personal questions on 80s TV? And they can't say this on 80s TV either. Leland T. Lynch is trying to make a volcano like the one he saw Peter make on the Brady Bunch. Leland Tiberius Lynch says, I number 3. Data says they're caught in the planet's gravity, but they're nowhere near a planet. -1 point for a reflection of something by Lieutenant Worf. Another rare overhead shot. The Enterprise computer quotes the Deep Space Nine computer.
That procedure is not recommended. Procedure is not recommended.
Everyone knows the ratio is 1-to-1, so -1 point. Leland T. Lynch says they now have warp drive. Geordi says, I number 4. This planet doesn't rotate, so -1 point. This bar graph is definitely used later, so -1 point. Data says they can't beam up the injured due to interference, but they beam down. Maybe they should have taken a shuttlecraft instead. -1 point. Here, there are no impact marks in the ground around the shuttlecraft. Does anybody know if this is computer generated or hand-drawn animation of the oil slick moving around? Riker thinks it's Apollo 13 time. -1 point for Riker not telling Picard the oil slick moves. Geordi says, I number 5, so it's time to drink.
We like to drink, 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 drink.
The goo comes to life. Riker compares it to his favorite board game. This is Armus, made out of Metamucil and printer's ink. And he loves the Who's On First routine. Riker believes everything in the universe, including Wikipedia. Armus does not believe in Wikipedia. Tasha stands up to Armus. Yes! -1 point for an obvious stunt double. Crusher runs to Tasha while Riker and Data fire, but they all get there at the same time. -1 point. -1 point for a terribly cold attack on Tasha. They could have done something better for her last show. They were lucky Armus couldn't block their transporter signal like he's doing on the shuttlecraft. Worf says, I number 6. Tasha dies. Aww. And -1 point for Tasha's death. I'll get to that later. The sand is way too smooth here, so -1 point. -1 point for not the greatest of graphics. And if the shuttle really crashed into those rocks, both of them would be dead, so -1 point. Armus says, I love you. Deanna says, I know. Now for some boring cerebral counseling. Lieutenant Worf is now Chief of Security. Maybe he will finally get some more lines. They ask if Worf is going to the surface. Worf's like, hell no, he's gonna kill me too. Picard quietly mourns the loss of Tasha. -1 point for not beaming down with a security team that's heavily armed. Armus still wants to know the left fielder's name, and -1 point for using 2 phrases in a row that both say makes them or you uneasy. Now Troy wants to know the left fielder's name. The first baseman would have nothing to do with him. All this time Armus was saying that it was beautiful, perfect beings that left all their evil behind on this planet, but in reality, it was the others. Wesley makes the discovery that they have been using the same graph for the whole show, and -1 point since he does not have a communicator while on duty. Worf says, I number 7. Riker now quotes Frankenstein.
She's alive! Alive!
Armus quotes Michael Scott.
I will allow it.
Beverly calls Armus the left fielder.
The left fielder's name. Why?
Riker wants to know what he's made of. Be careful with that question, you might get soaked in it. Geordi would have a better search pattern for his visor, so -1 point. One thing about this show, it does have really good music. Troy says it was the first baseman that left him. So whatever left him here are like angels now, right? It moves like a shadow since there's no sand displacement. And there goes Riker, but it's his double from the back. Look closely, Geordi drops his phaser in the goo. Worf and Wesley make the discovery that Armus has really bad mood swings when he's talking to Deanna. Women will do that to you. -1 point for Worf not freaking out when Captain Picard says he's going down to the surface alone. That will leave only Worf and Wesley on the ship. And -1 point, Riker's body probably would have been crushed in Armus's goo. Deanna offers her body. Yes! Geordi has his phaser back, so -1 point. -1 point for stage lights shining on Armus. -1 point for Picard coming down without a security team. Worf would know better. The next scene is rather cerebral, and these scenes can be boring. Ironically, it reminds me of a scene between nuns and a biker gang in the movie Where Angels Go, Trouble Follows. This is one of the rare times Data says a life form should be destroyed. Picard says, "We're done with your crap," and then quotes Luke Skywalker.
I care.
Shout out to Jonathan Frakes for doing his own stunt, but I don't think he'll ever do that again. Worf says I number 8. Armus says he wants to leave. Picard says, "What does God need with a starship?" Picard asks Deanna if she knows the left fielder. Deanna says he was left behind because nobody liked him. In today's Hollywood, that would never pass. Armus asks Picard if he liked his Snickers bar. Picard quotes Percy Shelley. Armus says, "Quit with the poetry, just get me off the planet." This is actually an interesting theory that a planet of advanced life forms can leave behind all their evil in one pile of goo. -1 point for a number having 2 decimal points. Picard sits on a rock planning his next move. Picard wins the battle by boring Armus to death about freedom, and he says, "I'm not taking you anywhere."
I'm not taking you anywhere.
-1 point, the 3 are in the exact same positions as before. Shout out for the really good sad ending music. Did their blue turn green for this, or is it just the lighting? -1 point since Tasha only says goodbye to the main characters. -1 point because they are not wearing their dress uniforms. Tasha's really only been with them for a few months, but she already had a goodbye video made. Having Tasha die was the wrong thing to do. They could have simply had her get a new Starfleet assignment along with a farewell episode like Wesley had. Then she could come back instead of Commander Shelby in the Best of Both Worlds. However, this is a reminder that what you see on the screen has nothing to do with what's going on behind the scenes. Gates McFadden called the show sexist. Denise Crosby in an interview said all they wanted her to do was stick out her chest and shake her butt. Then the only female to remain is the one that shows the most cleavage. So something was going on. Personally, I think she should have stuck it out for another year, but she had a pretty good career off Star Trek, so it was probably a better choice at that time. Picard says goodbye in that obscure language of French. Worf is thinking, I'll get more speaking parts now, but I'm not shaking my butt either. Then Picard says, Data, we know what you and Tasha did. And Data sadly contemplates what it's like to do the nasty with someone who just got killed in action. Aww. Raymond Forchion has 75 screen credits, including Neron. Brad Zerps pursued a career behind the camera. And Walker Boone recently left us. Not only was he Leland T. Lynch, he had a career of cartoon voices, including Mario. The voice of Armus was Ron Gans, who also did cartoon voices. And the actor was Mark McChesney, who was also the Shellyak. Skin of Evil, about a creature that was left behind and the demise of Tasha Yar, gets a score of 67%. Thanks for viewing. Be sure to leave comments below, click that like button, the share button, the subscribe button, and I'll see you again.